I always thought betrayal would come with warning signs, suspicious glances, missed calls, maybe a shift in energy. But when it happened to me, it came dressed in familiarity. My name is Derek Wyatt, and I was engaged to the woman I thought I'd grow old with. Her name was Eliza, and the man who stood beside me as my best man, that was Sean, my best friend since high school. We'd been inseparable, three of us like family, vacations together, birthdays, endless Friday nights around the same kitchen table, and for years I never noticed the tension that must have been simmering just beneath the surface. I trusted them with everything, my time, my loyalty, and eventually my silence. I was working overtime trying to build a startup that all three of us had once dreamed of. A real-deal scalable software platform for small logistics companies. My idea, my execution, but their support. Eliza helped with early branding. Sean, who had a background in finance, helped me structure our budget. And I did everything else. The coding, the client outreach, the grunt work. They cheered me on, told me they were proud, and I believed them. Until the Thursday I came home early. I'd closed a small seed deal that morning and decided to surprise Eliza with lunch. She didn't hear me come in. The sound system was playing some indie band she loved, and her phone was nowhere in sight. That's probably why she didn't hear my footsteps either, or see me standing in the hallway as she whispered into someone's ear on the couch, legs tangled with his, a champagne flute still in her hand. And that someone? With Sean, I didn't say a word. I just walked back out the door, drove around for 3 hours. I don't remember what I listened to or where I went. All I remember is the dull throb in my chest, the kind that doesn't scream. It just settles, like wet cement. That night, they tried to explain, said it just happened, that they didn't mean for me to find out like that it wasn't about me, it was about them, as if that made it better. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I told them both I was done. Eliza packed her things the next day. Sean didn't even bother reaching out after that. I shut down everything. The startup, the partnerships, the vision board on my wall. I couldn't look at it anymore. It felt contaminated, like every plan I'd ever had their fingerprints on it. And I disappeared for a while, took a corporate gig across the state, changed my number, deleted every shared photo from the cloud. For the next few years, I became the version of myself that didn't care, or at least tried to be, but time has a way of clearing the fog, and bitterness, no matter how justified, eventually becomes too heavy to carry around every day. So I started over, slowly. I took night classes in business development, switched roles, climbed the ladder. I kept my head down, did good work, and built something quietly again, this time without help, without distractions. And then one day, I got a LinkedIn message from an old investor who'd once passed on my startup. We're revamping a logistics portfolio. I've been watching your progress at BirdTech. You ever consider leading a spin-off? I hesitated at first. I'd built a safe, calm life. But that spark? The one I thought had died? It flickered again, and that flicker became fire. Within months, I was running an independent division under a larger umbrella, my own team, my own budget, a chance to do it right, on my terms. That's when I started seeing Sean's name again. It popped up in a client email chain. His company, one I'd never heard of, had submitted a proposal for a software partnership. I clicked the OER link, froze the product demo. It was my platform, rebranded, slightly modified, but unmistakably mine. I read the code specs, the UI, even the customer journey. They hadn't even changed the onboarding logic. I dug deeper. His co-founder, Eliza, of course, turns out they had revived my original startup plan, took my old pitch deck, slapped on a new name, and raised capital based on features I'd spent years building. I felt sick. But not because it was stolen, no, because it was familiar, because it reminded me of the version of myself I had killed to survive. For 2 days, I didn't sleep. I just read everything I could about their company, who backed them, who ran ops, where their gaps were, and I realized something. They were struggling. Their users were churning at 28%. Clients were complaining about slow support. They had investors breathing down their necks. They were growing, sure, but with cracks in the foundation. Cracks I knew how to fill, because I'd already built the blueprint once. And this time, I had leverage. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted proof. So I scheduled a meeting with my executive team. I pitched a bold move: acquire their flailing company under the guise of a merger, offer them a chance to scale their user base using our infrastructure, present it as a lifeline, not a takeover. My board approved it, barely. I kept my personal stake hidden, didn't mention the history, just showed them the data, and 2 weeks later, we had a meeting on the books. The CEO of their company, Sean, was scheduled to meet with me. He had no idea who he'd be shaking hands with, and Eliza, she was on the invite too. I didn't sleep the night before, not from nerves, from anticipation, because finally, after all these years, I wouldn't have to explain myself. I wouldn't have to defend my silence or justify my grief. They would walk into my office, sit at my table, and finally see the man they thought they broke, still standing. But this time, I wasn't the one who needed answers. They were. I didn't cry when Hannah left. That part came later, quietly, when I was alone in the shower or in the middle of the night when I'd wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. But when she left me for Eric, it wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. They didn't try to hide it. In fact, a week after she moved out, they went public. Photos on Instagram, holding hands at the county fair, him kissing her cheek at the pier. They looked like a couple from a damn furniture ad, picture perfect, curated smiles, filtered betrayal. My friends didn't know what to say. My parents offered the usual condolences. You'll find someone better. Things happen for a reason. And my personal favorite, you dodged a bullet. But no one really knew how to help me unfeel what I'd felt, to undo years of connection, with one clean break. What no one saw, what I never admitted out loud, was how deeply I blamed myself. For not being more spontaneous, for choosing security over grand gestures, for assuming that love meant staying instead of constantly reproving your worth. I spiraled for a while, moved to a new apartment, cut off mutual friends, buried myself in work, started running again, sometimes late at night, just to exhaust the thoughts looping in my head. Work became everything. I was a mid-level project manager at a growing software firm, and I threw myself into it like it was the only thing, keeping me upright. I volunteered for everything: client presentations, beta testing, even late-night troubleshooting. My boss, Derek, once joked that I lived in the server room. But he wasn't entirely wrong. The only place I felt remotely in control was behind a desk solving problems no one else could, and it paid off. 2 years later, I was promoted to senior manager, then director. I started traveling, London, Seattle, Singapore, pitching enterprise solutions to clients I used to dream about. I kept my head down, my work clean, my reputation impeccable. Meanwhile, Hannah and Eric faded into the background. I muted their names online, filtered them out of my photos, trained my mind to treat them like characters in a story I didn't finish reading. I thought I was past it. But closure has a funny way of disguising itself as distance. And just when you think you've outrun it, life circles back with a test. It was a Thursday morning when my assistant, Jordan, walked in with a file. "New acquisition paperwork," she said. "We're finalizing the deal with Nexus Design Group." I froze mid-sip of my coffee. Nexus, I knew that name. Jordan kept talking, flipping open the folder, pointing at org charts and leadership bios. Your department will onboard their creative teams," she continued. "And here's the interesting bit. Co-founders Eric Benton and Hannah Miles." My heart stopped. Eric. Hannah. I didn't hear the rest of what she said. Something about transition schedules and Q1 roadmaps. My ears were ringing. They'd started a company together, not just a relationship, but a whole damn business. I kept my expression neutral, nodded at the right moments, but inside, I was reeling. I Googled them after Jordan left. Their website was sleek, minimalist, very West Coast. Smiling headshots, testimonials from boutique clients. They weren't huge, but they'd built something real. Real enough for our parent company to buy them out. And now they'd be reporting to me, not hypothetically, not in some distant, abstract way. No, on Monday morning, they'd walk into our office as part of the team I led. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing, like my emotions hadn't caught up with the moment yet. I spent the weekend in a weird daze. I didn't tell anyone, didn't go out. Just sat with it, ran 6 miles on Saturday, cooked a meal I barely tasted, reread their company bio like it held secret codes. By Sunday night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be petty. I wasn't going to gloat. I was going to be professional, polite, distant. They'd chosen their path. I'd built mine. That was the end of it. But life, as always, had other plans. The moment Hannah walked into the conference room Monday morning, everything I'd rehearsed evaporated. She looked different, still beautiful, but different. Not in the way people age, in the way people carry weight they didn't expect to. There were faint lines near her eyes. Her smile was thinner, tighter, like it didn't reach all the way up anymore. Eric followed behind her, holding a laptop under one arm. He still had that smug, casual confidence, like he belonged everywhere. But there was something off, a hesitation in his step, a flicker of recognition when he saw me. "Dean?" Hannah said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded once. "Good morning." Eric cleared his throat. "Wow, this is unexpected." I gave them the same smile I gave to difficult clients. "Let's keep this about the work." We dove into the transition meeting. I kept it factual, metrics, targets, integration timelines. The whole time, I watched them shift in their seats, struggling to focus, realizing the power dynamic had reversed. They weren't visiting. They weren't consultants. They were employees, and I was their boss. After the meeting, Hannah lingered. "Dean, can we talk?" she asked softly. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once held my heart like it was fragile glass, who shattered it and handed the pieces to someone else. "What is there to talk about?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She hesitated. "I didn't know you were here when the deal happened." I raised an eyebrow. "Does it matter?" She paused, biting her lip. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. It was the first time I'd heard those words from her, and as much as my younger self might have longed for that apology, it landed hollow, because too much time had passed, because I didn't need it anymore, because the person I used to be, the man who would have begged for closure, was gone. "You don't owe me anything, Hannah," I said quietly. "We're not those people anymore." She nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. "I know, but still, I regret how it happened. You didn't deserve that, and maybe that was true. But standing there, in that office I'd earned through grit and silence and resilience, I realized something else. I didn't need her to tell me I was worthy. I already knew. She left me. He betrayed me, but I rose anyway, and now they'd have to watch me from the back row, just like I once watched them walk away. The first time I saw them again was by accident. I'd just stepped off the elevator into the executive wing of Clyden & Beck, one of the oldest consulting firms in the city. I was scheduled to meet the board for a project bid. It was supposed to be just another pitch. Walk in, impress the suits, walk out. But then I heard a voice, her voice, soft, measured, polished to perfection, just like always. I stopped in my tracks. At the far end of the hallway, Eliza stood beside one of the partners, laughing politely, nodding as she flipped through a tablet. She hadn't changed much. Same sharp suits, same confident posture, but something in her eyes looked strained, like a smile held too long in a photo. And beside her, Jason, hair slicked back, crisp navy jacket. He looked successful, tired, but smug. His hand grazed her back as they turned a corner. They hadn't seen me. Not yet. I ducked back and leaned against the cold marble wall. My breath caught in my throat, not out of heartbreak, not any more, but out of something else. A flicker of disbelief. This firm, of all places. The same firm bidding for the acquisition we'd just won at Sableworks. I'd done my research. I'd just never connected the names. But now it all made sense. I wasn't just meeting a board that day. I was about to meet them in my position as their superior. I checked my watch. 20 minutes until the meeting. I stood there for a moment, collecting myself. Then I walked down the hall and into the glass conference room with a calm I didn't quite feel. Eliza was seated near the head of the table when I entered. She looked up, and her face froze. Jason was beside her, and he flinched like someone had slapped him across the soul. I didn't say a word, just took my seat at the front, placed my leather binder on the table, and opened to the agenda. Good. Morning, I said, glancing around. I'm Daniel Reeves, founder and director of Ridgepoint Strategies. I'll be leading today's session. No one else in the room blinked, but Jason. He looked like he might throw up. I kept my eyes on. The board members walked through the strategy, answered questions, even cracked a joke or two. It was clinical, efficient, controlled, and I never once looked directly at them. That was the power shift they didn't expect. For years, I was the one carrying the weight of the betrayal, of the silence, of the why me. And now, I was the weight in the room. After the presentation ended, the board thanked me and asked Eliza and Jason to stay behind for a short debrief. I nodded, packed my things, and turned to leave. But then I stopped, turned halfway, met Eliza's eyes and said, "You'll need to bring your projections in line with what we discussed. I'll expect a report by Thursday. You still have access to the system, right?" She nodded silently. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. I left. Outside the building, the sun hit differently. I felt lighter, not triumphant, not smug, but like I had finally returned something that had been taken from me without asking. Control. That night my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize, but I knew it was her. I didn't answer, not right away, but she sent a message. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for a long time, then replied, "Meet me tomorrow, 6 p.m., Jackson Street Cafe." When I arrived, she was already there, hair tied back, no makeup, no mask, just Eliza. She stood when I walked in. "I didn't know you'd be at Ridgepoint," she said softly, once I sat down. "And I didn't know you'd follow Jason into Clyden," I replied. She didn't argue, just looked down. There was a pause. Then she whispered, "You've built something incredible." I let the compliment hang between us, then asked, "So, why reach out?" She exhaled. "You were right, about everything, about him, about us. I thought I wanted power, momentum, but I've been exhausted for years." Her voice cracked a little. "He pushes, always, takes credit, talks down to staff. I'm not happy, Daniel, not in the way I thought I would be." I didn't say anything, because I didn't feel angry anymore, just tired of pretending I ever needed closure from her. "Why now?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Because watching you, in that room, I saw what I'd walked away from. Not success, not money, integrity, respect. That thing you always had, even when the world didn't see it yet. A silence fell between us. Then she added, "I never said I was sorry," and finally she did. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I didn't fight for you when you were still fighting for me." I looked at her, and all I saw was a woman chasing something that didn't exist anymore. "Thank you," I said quietly, "but you don't owe me anything." "And I don't owe you forgiveness," she nodded, wiped a tear. We didn't speak after that. The next week I got a call from Clyden and Beck. Jason had been let go. The board cited conduct misalignment, and Eliza, she stayed, promoted into a different team, away from him. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was the team I was building, the partnerships I was nurturing, the life I'd rebuilt on the ashes of betrayal, not to get back at them, but to prove to myself that being left behind didn't mean I stayed there. People leave, friends betray, lovers lie. But the truth always finds its way back, to the surface, even if it takes years, even if you have to sit across from the person who buried it. You'll rise, and when you do, don't shout, don't gloat, just show up, and let the silence speak louder than any apology ever could. They say the best revenge is living well. I never fully understood that until the morning I walked into the executive wing of our newly acquired partner firm and saw Jason sitting in the waiting area. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired you cure with a vacation, but the kind that comes from running too hard for too long in the wrong direction. His suit was a little too rumpled, his smile too forced when he noticed me. "Daniel," he said, standing like we were old friends, catching. "Up. Didn't know you were dropping in today." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm the integration lead," I replied calmly. "I'll be running point on the transition." His mouth moved like he wanted to say something else, but he stopped. I didn't offer a handshake, just walked past him and into the conference room, where the real decisions were being made. That's the thing about timing. You don't get to control when justice arrives. Sometimes it shows up quietly, dressed, in a suit, holding the pen that rewrites everything. I took my seat at the head of the table. 10 minutes later, Eliza walked in. She didn't look surprised to see me this time, just nodded once, almost like an acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us. She took a seat across the room, kept her head down, and then the meeting began. After the merger, our first order of business was restructuring. Jason's team had been underperforming for the last 2 quarters. I already knew the numbers. I also knew the culture. He led by charm and shortcuts, not by strategy or results. I gave him one opportunity, to present a retention plan. He stumbled through it like a man bluffing his way through a hand with nothing in it. Afterward, the board asked for my recommendation, and I gave it. Jason's department doesn't align with the direction we're heading. We need results, not theatrics. Nobody argued. He was let go quietly. No dramatic scene, just an email and an exit interview. The same way he'd left my friendship years ago, without looking back. But the part that surprised me the most? Eliza didn't try to stop it. She didn't defend him. Didn't even flinch when the decision was made. It was like she already knew. He wasn't worth saving. A few weeks passed. The new teams were settling in. The awkward energy had started to lift. One afternoon I found myself walking past Eliza's office. The door was open, but she didn't see me. She was on a call, laughing softly, her posture finally relaxed. She looked free, different from the woman I remembered. Or maybe just real for the first time. I kept walking. I didn't need another conversation. We'd had the ones that mattered. The following month, our firm held its annual summit. Over 200 employees from all branches gathered under one roof. It was a chance to showcase wins, align on vision, and celebrate the people who helped build what we'd become. I stood backstage, reviewing my notes for the closing keynote, and as I looked out across the room, I saw familiar faces, some loyal from day one, some who had doubted me, and even a few who had once left me behind. But I didn't feel bitterness. I felt grounded. I walked onto the stage and looked out over the crowd. "My name is Daniel Reeves," I began. "Some of you know me well. Some of you only know the title. But what matters today isn't who I am, it's what we've all become together." I paused, letting the silence settle. Years ago I watched something I helped build get taken from me. Not just an idea, not just trust, but belief. The belief that doing things the right way would still get you where you need to go. A few heads nodded, so I built again. Quietly, slowly, with the kind of people who still cared about integrity, about showing up, about staying when it's hard and speaking truth when it's easier to stay silent. More nods, more stillness, and look at us now, I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I didn't have to lose myself to get here. After the summit, I got a note from HR. Eliza had put in a request to transfer to a different branch, one across the country. No drama, just a clean slate. She never said goodbye. I think she knew she didn't need to, and I didn't chase her. Her chapter in my story was finished, and mine, it was just beginning. That night, I drove home late. No radio, just the hum of tires and the soft rhythm of the city lights rolling by. I pulled into my driveway, stepped out, and looked up at the stars. There was a time I thought I needed closure, answers, maybe even revenge. But the truth is I never needed any of that. I just needed to remember who I was before they tried to rewrite me. Inside, I poured a drink and walked to the back porch. The same porch where I'd once stood wondering why they left. Now I stood there in silence, content with what I'd kept, my values, my voice, my peace. That's the real victory, not the promotion, not the power, but the quiet certainty that no matter who walks away, you don't have to follow, you build again, you rise again, and when you do, you don't shout, you just walk in the room, take your seat at the table, and let the past realize what it lost.